In Philippians 4, verse 13, Paul says, "I have the strength to face all conditions by the power that Christ gives me." Praise God, many of our churches and members have proved that over the last couple of years. We are grateful to Jenny Garrard and Miara, our mission enabler, for putting together the following report.
Early in lockdown, we all entered a great technological and communication revolution. And amazingly quickly, many of our churches rose to the challenge. Weekly videocasts were sent out on Facebook or YouTube, or Zoom services began, as here in Abu Dhabi. These gave scope to be much more creative in worship, introducing new hymns on video and even new musicians. Also, churches discovered more of their own members, happy to do prayers, readings, lead the service, or import a sermon or reflection from the wider church. As one elder said, we have learned more about what is important in worship, to be more innovative and flexible in using screens and corporate prayer. Also, we've reached more people through technology than normally we would have in chapel every Sunday. Down in Brecon, for example, some of David Jenkins' dog walking friends admitted they too looked at his Facebook service. Evangelism has a new face, and there's no turning back now. 4 of our chapels are looking at installing a permanent screen and projector, and another has installed a new sound system. It didn't stop at Sundays. The Bible course by Andrew Ollerton, recommended by Deleth Oswy, the training officer, was done as a Zoom course for Presbytery all last winter. When restrictions lifted, we even got to Montgomery Castle for a picnic. Those who can't access technology have not been forgotten. Churches have sent out weekly or monthly printed devotions. In Radnorshire, the Reverend Brian Reardon's devotions were delivered by quad bike to Outlying Farms. In COVID, we also rediscovered the ministry of the telephone, with elders and members keeping in touch by phone with the housebound or sharing in community schemes to keep in touch with the lonely and the vulnerable. By Christmas, the congregation here in St David's, Aberystwyth, was so concerned for those who couldn't access Zoom or get to church that they made up cream teas and delivered it to them, and at the same time lit up the outside of the chapel at night. One way of getting around the restrictions about being inside buildings has led to the rediscovery of the outside spaces around our churches. Trinity Llanidloes began last summer with a prayer garden, which led to further reflective spaces at Christmas and Easter, and this summer a reflection on the parables called a story garden. Many chapels took their services outdoors, either in the sunshine at Aberbechen Chapel last year with the cows joining in over the fence, in the rain in August in Casus, for Gayforth's 150th anniversary, and even in the town car park in Brecon for a drive-in service. New Church uses its position on Offers Dyke to keep its building open for walkers. And ribbons of remembrance have been hung on railings in Llanidloes, marking 1 year since COVID lockdown. And more recently, Chapel and Church in Montgomery have put out their thank you banner. Prior to COVID, there were 6 Open the Book teams working in a total of 11 schools in our presbytery. You may be able to spot at least 1 or 2 past association moderators in these pictures. One has become a Roman centurion. But some teams have kept going by video.
Forward march!
He shouted once everything was ready.
Yes, sir! Right away, sir!
Answered each and every man, and they marched off together, through the streets of Capernaum.
It was Monday. Mary, Martha and Lazarus were back at the kitchen table eating breakfast. They could hardly believe what had happened and had to keep reminding themselves that it was true. Jesus really had brought Lazarus back to life.
Sick!
Then he was. Not at all nice. Everyone leant over the side again. Then Peter shouted, "Look!" A man was walking across the water towards them. Walking, not swimming. They all screamed. There was a full-scale panic and the boat rocked even more wildly. The figure kept on coming and their friends began to moan piteously.
We're doomed.
Oh, we're double doomed. It's an apparition.
It's coming closer! It's after us!
Oh.
A number of our churches are very small, and sadly 4 have recently closed and 2 more have merged. And Kenchester doesn't know if it's with us or not, but that's already been on the agenda today. I find this picture very moving of the final service of the Bomer Heath Chapel before they merged with Harmer Hill. It had been a chapel that was really part of that village community just outside Shrewsbury, and it tried hard to keep going with regular coffee mornings and ecumenical events. But as with many churches, its members were ageing and infirm, and this year its remaining members joined with Harmer Hill. Church closures are not just statistics. They can cause grief and pain to the saints of God. Back to statistics, and loss comes to in a depletion of the number of ministers. We have 3 part-time ministers, but the Reverend Monica O'Day, newly ordained since we last met, is now the only full-time minister in Presbytery, a presbytery that stretches from Llandovery to Oswestry and Aberystwyth to the outskirts of Hereford. However, we do praise God for bringing to us Miara and Rebecca and Rob Morse. We also rejoice that Rebecca has successfully candidated for our ministry, and without Miara's help you wouldn't have this film today. There are matters of concern too in terms of finance. In lack of members, 2 churches reported receiving new members, but even with congregations that maintain an adequate congregation, that's often not reflected in membership numbers. 4 Sunday schools remain, but there are family services and children's work in several more chapels. Aware that many of our chapels are very small, we want to share with you an exciting initiative from one of our smallest chapels, just 7 members, in Montgomeryshire. Miara is interviewing Tracy Dunn from Brooks.
Caring for God's earth was very much in the minds of both chapel members and our wider community, so we've registered for the Eco Church project and are now working towards our Bronze Award. We've taken small steps, such as changing to LED light bulbs, and we're drafting a policy for recycling and sustainability across all of our chapel activities. We've also teamed up with our local sustainable living groups and with our local wildlife trust, who will be working with us over the next couple of years to increase biodiversity on our chapel land. I think that the Eco Church project and Caring for God's Acre are great places to start if chapels want to be involved in this type of activity, as it's very flexible and adaptable to each chapel's unique circumstances. They have lots of ideas for action, both big and small. Easy steps to take include changing to LED light bulbs, switching to a green energy tariff, feeding the birds, or growing wildflowers.
The latest exciting development in mission and ministry is in the far southwest of the presbytery, in Llandovery, where Rob Morse was recently appointed. Faced with concern over the structure of William Williams Memorial Chapel, they've tried a test service in the town's craft centre, which has a well-equipped kitchen and cafe. They also set up courses within the community to provide a safe space for mental health issues. They have a presence in the Youth and Community Centre, and Rob himself is chaplain to Llandovery RFC. Through it all, says Rob, they want to be salt and light for Jesus and have found members and others growing in faith. Now, I hope the churches will forgive me for what I had to leave out, but as I compiled it, I remembered again words of Andrew Bowden to the Church of England when it was looking at closing village churches. He said, "What they need to realise is that these same villages have kept alive the rumour of God in a context that would have driven most bishops to despair long ago. They've shown a dogged perseverance on a par with Jacob labouring for Rachel. They too are the saints." I can only conclude, therefore, he says, that God must have a purpose for them. Now, we need your prayers as a presbytery, please, that we will rediscover that purpose and, by God's grace, turn the rumour of God into our communities, into living faith amongst its people. Thank you.